What's up, comic book fans? This is Pete from Comic Books Transformed, where me and my very good friend over there, Brian, talk about the adaptations from comic books into movies and streaming shows. Today, we are talking about Invincible Season 2, Episode 4. Now, Brian, you have been doing a bit of catching up with Invincible, right? The comic?
Yes, so this is going to be a very different episode for me because this is the first time that I've actually read the comic.
Nice.
I've binged about 30, 31 or 32 issues. No, I'm on issue 32, I think now, of the comic since our last recording. So now I know I've seen everything, how it happens in the comic and the show and the differences and all that. And honestly, I think the show just does it a lot better. It really there's something in this episode that I'll talk about when we get to it that is so much better than the way they did it in the comic, I think. And it's just that benefit of kind of adapting something, is you can kind of tweak things to make it better. You know, that this maybe didn't have the effect you wanted or something.
Yeah.
And you can make it a lot more powerful.
Yeah. It's kind of like The Boys, right? Because The Boys, I feel like, is superior to the comic as well.
Yeah, well, there was a time where I was like, it's like 50-50 because it was a weird, like usually I find that usually when you whatever you consume first is what you feel is better always.
Yes.
With rare exception, I think. But
Right.
with The Boys, maybe when we were reviewing season 3, I was like 50-50 on it because there were some things I liked in the book better. But I think after Gen V and maybe by the end of the season of season 3, I would probably say that the show is superior.
Yeah. Well, you know, it's funny because Brian Otley, I think I follow him on Instagram, and he like very frequently posts pictures from like the comic, and he's like, look, this is the exact same thing as what we did in the comic. And a good example of that is from last episode when he had Alan and his girlfriend at the diner in space, and he showed a panel that looked exactly like that, where Alan was
eating the little worms,
and then there was
my favorite thing, the bowl with eating the worms too.
Right. So you saw that panel when you read the comic?
Yeah.
Okay,
I mean, the girlfriend looks a little bit different. It looks a little bit more. She looks a little more like typical, like exotic space alien-y. You know, she looks more like a real person, I guess, in the show rather than kind of like an object in the comic.
Wow, see, that's an interesting change right there. Yeah. So, I mean, I'm so happy that you're reading the comic right now because, like I've told you a couple of times, I've read the entire thing of Invincible, but it's been so long. And so, like, I remember the girlfriend later in the book, but then, I guess she's in the book as early as, like, the first 30 issues.
Yeah, she is. But in the amount of issues we cover in season 1, I don't think she even speaks. Well, that's hard to say because they remix it so much. There are so many things. There are some things that are just going on right now that happened in the middle of season 1 in the show. So like things that are concurrent with Mark reuniting with his dad happened like 5-6 episodes ago in the show.
Okay.
So they're remixing it, and those remix things really have a lot to do with the side characters. You get a lot more of that in the show, which I really appreciate. Things like with the new Guardians of the Globe and Robot, Eve. You get a lot more of Eve in the show, I think, and more of her backstory. They've I know we had the Adam Eve special. They gave her whole origin and more. So far in the comic, up to where we are, which does go beyond some of what we see in the episode here. So with Mark reuniting with his dad, we've only got the very beginning of Eve's origin so far in the comic, and like there was like a couple like one page thing or 1-2 pages on all the Guardians characters, just their general origins, and which I don't think they really did for everybody in the show, but Eve got that whole big episode, which was really good.
Yeah, hell yeah. So, we can talk about the differences between the comic and the show right now. I know that we're going to be talking a lot about this whole part with Mark and Nolan on the alien planet and this huge Viltrumite battle. There's going to be spoilers for all you guys that are watching right now. Um, but basically, this episode is like it's that part with Mark and Nolan. There's a bit with his mom and Cecil and just kind of her trying to move on with her life. And then there is this whole like battle with Adam Eve, right? And there's a little bit with the Mauler twins too.
Yeah. So the Eve stuff, I don't think I've seen happen in the comic yet. Maybe that's added. I don't know, but all the other stuff is there for the most part in the comic. Maybe with some differences.
Yeah.
I mean, the big thing here is, and this is what I mentioned earlier, is that which I feel the show did a lot better. This initial meeting with Mark and his dad goes a bit differently in the comic. He still walks up and hugs him, but he is not as angry as he is in the show. I think like he says "fuck you" like 5 or 6 times to him here. That is
Yeah.
not in the comic. He basically breaks down and begs his dad to come back and like, why did you do this? It's a very different look at this scene. And
Mhm.
honestly, I think it works better in the show. I think that it's a more natural reaction to what happened.
Right, right. One of the things that's really interesting about covering adaptations of comics into movies and shows, right, is that you'll have something like this where it's an exact scene. It's a replica of a scene that's in a comic. And I think that as comic book readers and comic book writers, who of course are big comic book readers as well, there's certain story beats that you've seen many times over in comics. And so when they happen on in a comic, it's not this big shocking thing, or when something like really upsetting happens, like when a character dies or someone murders someone, it's not necessarily as traumatic as it would be in like a drama, like a movie or something like that, right? It's just you sort of there's certain things that you kind of take for granted because it's a comic book. Does that make sense what I'm saying so far?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, it's like, with the X-Men, for instance. Let's just use the X-Men, for example. Like, if an X-Man dies, if a regular person died in a movie, it'd be just like, oh my God, I can't believe they're dead. And there'd be like maybe half the movie be dealing with the grief of that. But with the X-Men, it's kind of like there's almost this thing where they know they're going to come back to life eventually.
With
You
rare
know,
exception.
Right, right. So I think that when they do these adaptations, especially when it's like a very like a kind of a socially aware lens where it's like, okay, we don't want to offend anybody, we want to make sure things are realistic. I think that they deal with these things uh they want to show the emotions more. They want to, just show how a person would react realistically. Do you agree with that, or do you think I'm kind of talking out of my ass?
No, I do agree. I think it's just what you're generally saying is that with the comic book, it's a lot easier to just maybe it's less shocking, I guess, because you know that it can be retconned,
Yes.
and as opposed to something that's supposed to be live action, more realistic. I mean, there are plenty of comic book movies that are live action, obviously, that can do these same kind of things here. But I do understand what you mean.
Cool. Yeah. So I mean, I love the fuck you that he says to the dad, and what I really love is when he meets his baby brother, and he's like, "You gotta be fucking kidding me!" And they do the title card, but then after the title card, he like finishes what he was gonna say. I really love that.
Yeah, they always use those title cards to great effect in this show. It's one
Yeah,
of
but
my favorite things about it.
he wasn't saying Invincible though. Usually, when the title card comes up, it says, "Oh, that's because your name is," and then it goes
Yeah,
Invincible. Yeah, yeah.
it kind of does break that tradition there, but I still I don't know. It's just it randomly popping up there. It's still I still enjoy it.
Yeah. So the interaction between Nolan is different, and oh damn, we didn't talk about that beginning sequence with Nolan flying through space. What'd you think of that?
Oh, that was fantastic. Again, the show just uses music to great effect. Um,
Yes.
I think it was a Nick Cave song, which I know the name. I'm not too familiar with the music. It's just they make excellent song choices here. It very much felt like a reflection on Mark flying around in the beginning of the season with to Karma Police, but just from Nolan's viewpoint. And it just a fantastic way to start the episode.
Yeah, yeah. Uh, there's stuff that we've seen because you and I've been doing this for almost 3 years. There's adaptations where every so often something kind of like transcends and it just seems like something bigger than just like a comic book adaptation. I think we saw some of it in like Guardians 3, and of course, like we saw it in the Karma Police, like you just mentioned. And then in this, like Nolan just like looking into that black hole, and then like just kind of like he's essentially gonna go kill himself. Oh my god, with that music, it was just like so well made, man.
Yeah, I don't
Ridiculous.
think so. They do show that in the comic,
Yeah.
but it's kind of like self-narrated. It's just some of the images are the same, but he's basically speaking about what was going through his head at the time, and he's just saying the same things. Really, it's like I don't know why I cared. Like I don't get it. I don't understand what happened, what changed, like why.
Yeah.
But I think it works so much better just showing it moving silently with the music.
Yes. Yes.
It conveys the same message, but it's just so much better.
Yep. Show don't tell. I always hate the exposition stuff, and it's like they can just show it without telling us what's going on. So good. So we go to this planet. It's called Thaxon, right? Or
I
Thrax,
believe so. Yeah.
something like that. Yeah. And it's a bunch of people that look like praying mantises, blue praying mantis people, and we meet Nolan's new love, who's this alien woman that he rescued on a ship that was going to go into the black hole. One of the best things about this show, and we've talked about this a bunch of times, is just the voice cast and the random people that are just characters on this show. I don't think you've watched Breaking Bad or Better Call Saul, but on Better Call Saul, one of the characters is played by Rhea Seehorn, and she's the alien wife on this episode.
Okay.
Yeah. And it was just so great to hear her voice. It's just so crazy to have a scene where it's like Steven Yeun, who I love so fucking much, and then her, and then fucking Phil Lamar just breaks through a cave wall. It's just I fucking love it, man.
Oh no, that wasn't Phil Lamar. That was wait. The first guy was that one Clancy Brown? Clancy Brown showed up somewhere. I don't remember if it was him or one of the other guys.
No. Clancy Brown is the one that is like General. It's not General Thrag.
Klieg.
He's the one that has like the eye,
Yeah.
And he just punches Mark in the face. That's the very end. That's Clancy Brown.
Okay.
Phil Lamar is the bald black guy that like comes through the cave wall.
Wow, how did I not recognize Phil Lamar? That's crazy.
Well, it's just because he's like in everything, and you just kind of like, oh, there's Phil Lamar.
Yeah.
So I want to hear your thoughts on this whole Viltrumite battle that takes place.
It's great. So the whole thing is that Nolan thinks that he has time to train Mark so he can fight. They can fight against whatever the Viltrumites come find him. We know they're looking for him because we know that's why Alan is now dead in the show. And again, in the comic, he's not dead at this point. That did not happen. So that's a little remix there as well. But it, much like the sudden attack on Alan, the Viltrumites just show up. I believe it's the same ones that were looking for him that fought Alan too, if I'm not mistaken.
It is.
So that's a nice touch, I think.
So let me ask you this: the scene with Alan and Optimus Prime, head of the Federation guy, that's not in the comic.
It is.
Oh, but he takes him off life support.
He doesn't take him off life support. So in that scene, that's the scene where he tells him that you can't report to the council anymore. You're only going to report directly to me now. Okay. He says that to him after they're walking out of the council.
Okay.
In the show, so it's different. So like he definitely does not take him off life support in the comic. Okay. So and I haven't seen him again since yet. So I'm very curious to how that's going to play out.
Okay. See, like that's the whole thing. Is I remember reading the book and I was like, and watching the show, I'm like, wait, did that actually happen? That's why I'm so happy you're watching this. So,
but it's cool though. Even if you have read it, I like things like this because it's like, whoa, that didn't happen. It still makes it exciting. So it's not. Yeah. I mean, you don't want to see an exact copy. No. I mean, I used to think I used to want to see that, but you want to see them hit certain notes. But sometimes you just can make things better, and maybe this is a way to do that.
Shit, yeah. So is the Viltrumite battle very similar?
Yeah, very much similar. It's Mark takes Andressa and baby whatever blue
Yeah.
baby who's nameless at the time to those caves. They do give you a little more backstory in the caves in the comic. Like it's some ancient like ritual site they use to avoid some natural disaster in this planet's past. Something we didn't mention here is that the lifespan of these characters, these blue praying mantis people, is about 9 months to a year.
Yeah, yeah,
They go through a
yeah.
full life cycle in that amount of time. So, you see Nolan meet his wife when she's a little kid, and months later, just he had a baby with her. um,
Yeah.
Interesting. Um,
Yes.
but yeah, the fights generally are very similar. Phil Lamar, who I think plays Lucan, something like that.
Yeah,
He
yeah,
finds
yeah.
that he first fights Mark in those caves there, and then Nolan does come and save him, and then the battle continues later on. The one difference is the Viltrumites, they were all men in the comic.
Oh,
One was not a woman, and that I don't think anybody had that braid thing, so that
okay.
was all new there.
I love that braid thing. I thought that was in the comics, and maybe it's like a Viltrumite that shows up later. But yeah, I love that braid. I love the way she's like swinging it around and it's so lethal. Yeah, I love that so
Yeah,
much.
yeah.
So one thing we should talk about, and this happens in the comics, so you can speak to this too. But like the comics are just like so graphic with the violence. It's like a horror movie. It's like as gross with the gore as you can get with certain horror movies. And this episode is no exception, right?
Yeah. Yeah, they just that one guy. I guess he's the main guy, like the leader of this little group here. Nolan is like smushes his head in some way,
Yeah.
so his like eyes are. I'm moving my face around like, as if everyone can see me, but like his eye, like one eye's up and his head squished a little bit, and he still makes a sound or says a line or something like that. So it's like extra gruesome.
Yes, yes. One thing that is awesome in the comics is that the Viltrumites will take this like graphic horror movie damage, but they'll still kind of do things, they'll still function. And that was really gross when he did that one guy. Um, even just when the Phil Lamar Viltrumite shows up and like he's ready to just kick Mark's ass, and then Nolan just goes like this, and I guess his fingernails just like slice open his stomach. It's so fucking nasty. I
And
love it.
then later on, he shows back up holding his guts like falling out of his body.
Yes, yes.
And it sounds like he crushes Nolan's spine essentially when he comes
Yeah.
back to attack.
So fucking intense. Yeah, yeah. So I mean, you have this battle, and the best part about this whole sequence, the very best part, is that Mark doesn't want to kill any of them. He's a good person. He has morals, and his father has this Viltrumite, experience and training. And he's like, listen, you have to fight them like they are trying to kill you, because they are trying to kill you. You have to try to kill them yourself. And you see Mark's humanity essentially as a weakness, and he almost gets killed in this episode too. He takes ridiculous damage. She fucking cuts him open with that braid and stabs him in his organs with the braid. It's
Yeah,
insane.
he gets incapacitated there, and then Nolan has to finish the job there, which also incredibly graphically basically rips that lady's jaw off with her own hair knife thing. But in
Well,
they
it's
present
what he
this.
good.
No,
Well, I was
go.
gonna say what he does is like she's like running at him, and he sticks out his arm, and then she smashes her face against his arm, and then her jaw's
Oh,
like
okay,
that.
but the whole jaw thing comes out. That's what I remember.
Yeah, so that's clearly the most graphic part of the whole episode.
Yeah. Um,
Yeah.
I think that with the comic, it goes a little differently in the sense that Nolan comments to Mark at some point about how he seems a lot stronger. So like I don't think he gives him that little pep talk in the comic. It was like, hey, like they're trying to kill you. You have to step up. Like he already
Yeah.
knows he's stronger, but prior to that, he actually hits Nolan in the back of the head at some point in the comic,
Oh
trying to
wow.
see if he was another one of those blue mantis people, disguising themselves. And that's when he comments about his, oh, you're a lot strong. You seem to be a lot stronger now.
Oh, I see. Okay, interesting, interesting. Okay. Yeah, yeah. So I mean there's little subtle changes like that, but the end result of the battle is the same, right?
The end result is essentially the same. But before we do that, I want to make the one comment about my favorite scene which is pretty much ripped from the comic.
Okay.
Right before they face off, Nolan and Mark face off with the two Viltrumites. Uh, Nolan grabs Mark by the neck and he just starts screaming like, "Why? Like, why? What happened? What did you do? Why did you do this to me? Why do I
Yes, yes,
feel
yes.
differently now?" I thought
Yes.
that was such a powerful delivery of that line and scene. And
Yes.
then he just lets him go, and then they're just back to fight. Back to being on the same side.
Yes.
I thought that was just incredibly interesting to see in both comic and animation form.
Yeah, he has like tears in his eyes, right? When he's asking that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then the dialogue they says is the same as the comic.
Yes.
Okay.
Almost word for word, I would say. Yeah.
Ah, yeah. I mean, that's the whole thing, right? Is that you got fucking J.K. Simmons as this character. It's like you couldn't have better casting besides J.K. Simmons as J. Jonah Jameson. It's just like perfect casting for this character, this voice actor. And then Stephen Yun, I know I've said this before when we've reviewed this show, but I fucking love Stephen Yun. And I always go back to Voltron, Defender of
Yeah.
the Universe, whatever the fuck it's called. And like he has some screaming in this too. I think he screams when he hits Nolan or something. He's just like, or it's just he's just screaming at Nolan. He says "fuck you" a whole bunch of times, like we said. And I just love when Stephen Yun is upset and he's screaming.
Yeah.
You know,
Um,
oh, go ahead, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was going to say, in general, J.K. Simmons, Stephen Yun, Sandra Oh, all just absolutely out of the park, incredible in this show every week.
Absolutely, yeah. And if you're going through like a little bit of Stephen Yun withdrawal, because I know we're hitting a breaking point with the show,
Yeah.
I really recommend checking out Beef on Netflix.
I was hoping you were going to say that. Yeah, I really want to watch that.
Yeah, yeah, because I know I mentioned it before, but like I fucking love that guy. Anything he's in from now on, I'm watching.
Yeah.
But so yeah, let's talk about Sandra Oh though, because you just mentioned her. Um, so Sandra Oh, that sequence where the mom is walking on the street without her shoes on, is that in the comic?
No, so her story is a bit different. So
Yeah.
she is essentially just getting uh well, no, this is sort of the same. So she's receiving income based on Nolan's books,
Right.
and with the assistance of the government also.
Hmm.
Uh, but in the show, she already was employed, like in the beginning, like she had a job. She wasn't a housewife. In the comic,
Mm.
she was just a housewife, really.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
in the comic, she's trying to get her real estate license so she can have an income. But she already is a real estate agent in the beginning of the show, I believe.
Okay.
So the story here is that in the show, she's telling Cecil, I don't want the government help anymore. I don't want the money from Nolan's books. I want to, thank you, but use the money to help elsewhere. In the comic, she's still in the process of getting a job herself, and Cecil even offers her a job, with working with the government, but she doesn't accept it yet
Okay.
or anything like that. So I don't know where that's going to go. I imagine because she's a real estate agent, I think she is anyway in the show. That's what she's going to stick with
Okay.
uh, moving forward. But then also, uh, Mark brings home a baby now.
Right. Right. Well, spoilers for those who aren't reading the comic. Yes.
Oh my God, that didn't happen yet.
Yes. 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 And that was the thing. Like one of the things was
Shit.
I couldn't remember if would you say her name was Mantessa was the wife.
And Tressa.
Andressa, thank you, thank you. I couldn't remember. Like I was like, did she die and then the baby goes back? I couldn't remember. So I mean,
Okay, so spoilers, comic spoilers. The Thraxans kind of nurse Mark back to health, and but by the time he's ready to leave, which is only like a week or two later, Address is like, "I'm gonna be dead like in like 2 weeks. You have to take this kid because otherwise he's not going to survive."
okay, okay, I
Because
got you.
the aging is slow. So anyway, yeah, that's a spoiler alert for whenever the show comes back in a few months. But the episode ended with, well, the first ending was with Nolan telling Mark to read his books. So I'm assuming there's some kind of knowledge that he can use against the Viltrumites, embedded in those books. I don't
Yes.
know if he says that in the comic. I don't remember exactly.
I,
Uh,
I
I
yeah,
think I think so.
yeah, I think he does because I think that is kind of a plot point later. And it's funny because like I kept thinking about that when I was watching the episode. He's like, read my books. And then the very next scene is the mom putting the books on the curb. And I was
Yes.
thinking, is there gonna be a whole sequence in this show where he's like, I can't find my dad's books. He has to like go on eBay and stuff. I was like, I don't think that'll be very thrilling, you
I mean,
know?
it's not like there's just one copy of them, like,
Right. That's what I kept thinking too. It's like, oh, just
yeah.
get them on Kindle or something, you know?
I think it was
Yeah,
supposed to be symbolic that the mom is trying to get rid of all this stuff, and then he's going to try and find it now.
yeah,
He needs to.
yeah.
But yeah, other than that, the scene with General Klieg is essentially the same. He tells him that you're in charge of Earth now, and we're going to come check on you. But he gives him like a 100-year timeline
Yeah.
in the comic, and they don't really mention that. They just said like if we're going to come check up on you, that's all they say in the show, which I think works a little bit better to kind of streamline everything.
Yes, yes, that tension. I actually kind of forgot exactly how that whole battle went down in the aftermath, but I really love that of like he says basically, you can kill some humans to kind of show us that you're on our side, or we're going to come back and just kill millions. And I just thought that
Yeah,
was really scary. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, absolutely.
So, why don't we just real quickly just talk about the other characters and what we see going on with them?
Sure.
So, you were saying that there's slight differences with what's going on with some of the characters, or it happened like later in the book.
So yeah, the thing with Eve, I don't remember at all. That may be added or maybe later on. I'm not really sure, but it's just her essential. Well, man, I wonder if it was trying to replace a different scene. So there was a scene in the comic around this time period where Mark is away, that that all the heroes need to like band together and fight this like giant, almost Skeletor looking guy from like another dimension, and they had to fight him back there.
Yeah.
And maybe that's taking the place of the Eve scene here because Eve is involved in that.
Okay.
Um, and another character involved in that is Donald, who I feel is going to be a bit different here. So we do see a scene with Donald in the show here where he goes to kind of investigate uh, the aftermath of the Omni-Man attack. So he finds like a pair of glasses in this house across the street where he was surveilling the Graysons. And he goes this little rabbit hole and he basically watches himself die, and he just doesn't understand it.
Right. Right.
How he's alive. So then you see him go into the office, and then he like slits up his wrist,
Yeah.
just to see like what's underneath there, like what is there, and he does see blood there. But how they do it in the comic is in this giant battle, he's just like a robot, sort of like he's almost got like Rick and Morty's kind of like weapon things in his arms and stuff. And he's
Okay.
just like very matter of fact about it. So he says, "Oh, you're a robot?" And he's like, "Yeah," and that's kind of like it. So I feel like
Wow.
they're doing a much more interesting job with this character
Yeah.
uh, here.
Yeah. That's funny because I always remembered like we had talked about that in previous discussions of like what's going on with this guy, didn't he die? And then I always kind of thought of it as he was aware or he knew. And then in the show, when he goes in and he has this scene where he like cuts himself, I was like, oh, does he not know? Like I was like, this is kind of interesting. Um, with comics, it's what's so cool and but also can be sort of a detriment is that you don't see what's going on between the panels. You just see very specific images they're trying to show you. And when you have a sequence where a person is essentially like cutting their arm or like stabbing a vein in a comic, that could be disturbing, but it doesn't have the effect of a person like moving a knife on their arm in a show, like on an animated show or in live action. And so like I thought that was a very disturbing kind of graphic moment for a cartoon.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. And then of course it's like, oh well, the blade kind of broke when it broke skin, and there is blood, but it's like, obviously he's got like machinery or something inside.
Something hard is in there, which probably is machinery, or he's just some kind of cyborg, I guess.
Right, right, right. So there's the thing with him, and then even at the very end, there's the Mauler twins, and there's they've established, oh, this one is definitely the clone this time because the other one has like half of his body all burnt up, right?
Yes, and then they discover that their dynamic doesn't work when they know which one's the original.
Right. So the
So
clone
the
ends up
clone,
poison.
clone
Good.
kills the potential original. We don't even know
Yes.
which one it was, honestly, that
Right.
survived the first time. Uh,
Right.
and that was interesting. And now the crazy thing here is that remember how I said that some things happened like a long time ago. This
Yeah.
is also the same time around the same time that Robot shows up to enlist them to get him a clone body. So we've only just found out that Robot
Oh.
is like this some like weird little disfigured blob in a
Yes.
tube
Okay.
very recently. So like in the show, however, we've progressed to him cloning Rex and being a teenager and dating Monster Girl.
Yes. Yes.
It's definitely not shown on anything like that yet in the comic.
Oh man, I'm so happy that you're reading this comic now because like I remember watching that and being like, whoa, this is kind of early for this stuff. I was like, didn't this
Yeah.
happen later? Yeah, okay, so now okay, it makes a lot more sense now. Awesome, awesome.
And another thing too. Another thing that's going on in the issues in the comic now, which also happened last season. When Mark and William are going to check out the college, they fight that guy who's like reanimating corpses, and like they kidnap some guy or something like that, their friend or something that they've name dropped in this season somewhere.
Right.
That's still going on. Like they haven't found that guy yet. So like they haven't
Oh,
resolved that in the comic yet, but they resolved that back in season one already in the
oh
show.
wow. Wow. Okay, that is a big difference. Yes, his friend name drops that guy because he's talking about like him sleeping around or whatever, and he says, "Oh, I'm actually like a lot more cautious about my dating because of what happened to this one guy."
Yeah.
He says like he's kind of traumatized with that. Okay, yeah, yeah, yeah. That's cool. That's cool. I really love. Are you gonna keep reading the comics like now, or are you taking a little break? What are you gonna do now?
Well, I mean, I'm at least gonna finish the. I think I have 47 issues in the first compendium.
Whoa.
So I'm like 60% through or so, maybe a little more than that. And it depends on how much I can get compendium two for right now.
Yes, yes, yes.
The going digital price is like $40, which is kind of a lot.
Jesus,
So
for digital.
um,
Ugh.
yeah, unfortunately, we've talked about this offline that Comixology is basically dead now,
Yeah,
like really dead. Like they're merging the app into Kindle, and I'm very curious to see what's going to happen with their deals, which is the thing that's kept me going with them. Other
yeah.
than the fact that I have like 2,000 comics in my account. Uh, so, um, yeah, I hope there's still some outlet for those great sales they have, but I'm not sure. And I'll have to pull the trigger on those other issues sooner or later.
Yeah. God, that's so fucking depressing about Comixology. Yeah, I know. I use my library, and I know you were saying that like your local library doesn't even have like comic book trades, but one thing I use a lot is a thing called Hoopla, and it's like this just digital library app you can use or whatever. And I mean, it has like every fucking like Krakoa era X-Men book. I like Matthew Rosenberg. Like I just read Three Jokers by
Oh,
Jeff Johns, and I was like, oh, I want to read some Joker stuff now, and then they have like all the fucking Joker comics that DC's been putting out. So Hoopla, at least my library version, has a lot of stuff.
I'm wondering if it's different by state or anything like that. I don't think I've used it before. I mentioned it to my wife the other day, and she didn't
Yeah,
know what it was, but
yeah.
hopefully it's just as good. I actually don't have a library card in New Jersey, which is weird. Where
Oh,
I am, mine is New York, and I honestly have no idea what it is anymore because I haven't been anywhere near those libraries in years.
yes. Well, I'm gonna give you 10 months to get a library card. Otherwise, I'm gonna start killing millions of people.
Oh
Okay.
shit!
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm serious, man. You better read a
Can I
comic.
just read a few books instead?
You just read a few comics. I'll show me you're committed. Yes, yes. There you go. Nice. All right. Well, that was fun talking about Invincible. Invincible is going on the shelf now as we take this little break. Brian, you and I have kind of joked about how there's like going to be a gap of stuff coming up, but we didn't even discuss how What If is coming back in December, sort of leading up to Christmas, and it's like every single day there's an episode.
Oh really? I didn't know that.
Yeah, 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 yeah,
Oh,
yeah. It's
okay.
coming
Well, that
like
that helps.
yeah, it's coming out like December 22nd, and then it's like December 23rd, December 24th. So yeah,
We still have 3 weeks in between there.
Yeah, we'll
Yeah.
figure out something. We'll figure out
When's
something.
Aquaman? Oh, that's probably before that.
Aquaman is before that,
Okay.
but it's like Aquaman that, it's funny because like before you and I recorded last week, there was like a shit ton of trailers and stuff, and I was like, oh, we're gonna cover Invincible and all these things, but then we talked about the Marvels.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you guys make sure that you check out that Marvels review. I really enjoyed that one too, and if you haven't seen our other reviews of Invincible for this season, go check them out on our channel. Make sure you guys subscribe, and whatever Brian and I are doing, I'm sure it'll be fun, and we'll see you guys next week.